Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV live with another interview. I'm coming to you from Globe, Arizona. Even got the shirt on to help me find my way. Where's Globe, Arizona? I live here and I don't even know, but I'm told we're 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in the mountains. And my guest coming from Glassboro, New Jersey is Maison Guidry, who I'm so excited to have on because we've been showing your videos for like 3 years or so, even before you were with Jonathan Scales Fourchestra, which we'll show a clip of. But how are you, first of all?
I'm doing good. I can't complain.
Awesome. Great.
Taking it one day at a time.
Cool. I really appreciate you taking time to talk drumming and about your musicality. And well, actually, before I start a clip, we'll start with that. You know, some drummers are into one or two things. Some drummers are into a lot of things. Where does your musicality fit in the arc of different genres of music and stuff?
For me, I think that ultimately, my belief is that I feel like musicality is something. Well, first of all, I think music is a creative outlet, just like painting pictures is, just like Bob Ross, just like any other occupation out there that is considered an art. So when you talk about art it's a creative process, and creating is always in the moment. So when it comes to musical influence, for me, I feel like everything that's played and everything that's thought of should be creative. I feel like it should be in the moment. It should be inspired by how you feel, or inspired by your feelings, or inspired by what you go through every day in life.
With the spontaneity element?
Yeah. I mean, because when you're living in the moment, that's the ultimate creation. Like of course you can perceive creating something, or you can plan creating something, but then when you create it, it's just like, I just feel like creation should be in the moment. And for me, that's kind of what, it's kind of a habit that I usually practice. So when I'm playing, or when I'm doing music, or anything that takes a creative thought, or something that's just that causes me to put my creativity into something that I do, I really just try to be in the moment. I don't try to premeditate things, because then creating becomes stale. I feel like creation should be something that's beautiful and appreciated in the moment, versus something that's like pre-canned and then put on the shelf so that you can buy. So then when you open up the can of creativity, it's like, okay, you got creativity that's been sitting in this can for 3 years. It's not, it's creative, but it's like, it's not in the moment. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. I do. So is this tied to your love for jazz by any chance? Being that jazz has so much improvisational elements to it. At least it started out that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are kind of like my building blocks. So if I am a product of that, then that's definitely a mentality that I'm used to. So, having that mentality of perfect freedom, and being able to be honest about what I play, when I play it, and how I play it, that it's kind of cool, because from my perspective, it's one of those things that I usually like to say, when you're true to yourself, you can be held accountable. There's so many people who are probably inspired by so many different things, and they become a carbon copy of what inspires them, instead of taking from what inspires them to create themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's so many people who live their entire lives without knowing who they are, because their method of creating is so contingent upon the influence of something or someone else, versus understanding your creative mind and being honest about what you have to say, versus something that you can easily rip off of someone else.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, it's really about being in the moment. It's about being honest. It's about being 110% honest and being held accountable. So when I play something, I'm being held accountable because it's not coming from something that I saw someone else do. It's coming from my heart. It's coming from my mind, which again puts me in a place to be held accountable, because when I'm being true to myself and my creative process, it's like you're putting yourself in your entirety on a pedestal for people to see you and say, I don't like the way he plays. Or somebody can say, I totally like the way he plays. But the thing is that you're being true to yourself. So you're being held accountable when people are seeing who you are, because then that gives people that allows people to jump to any conclusion that they choose to. And I think that's what growth is about. It's not, okay, here, this is funny. I remember one time I was hanging out with an older guy, and we were kind of talking about relationships, and something that was said, if I'm not mistaken, I think they said being in a relationship is a choice.
Yeah.
Loving is a choice. Everything is a choice. And when you put yourself in a position when you're honest with yourself, it doesn't matter really where you are. There's going to be people who like what you do. There's going to be people who don't like what you do. There's going to be people who don't understand what you do. And that's totally fine, because you need the good and the bad in order to create something, But then again, it's just like if you're building blocks or your foundation to your character, and your creative mind stems from inside of you, and it's not necessarily depending on someone else's influence, then there's more of a purity in terms of the creative things that come out.
Right.
And then again, you find people who don't understand that all the time, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because everything is not for everyone. But don't ever change yourself to be accepted by anyone. I was just telling someone today, it's just like, there's only one of each of us, not unless if you have an identical twin, but there's only one of each of us, one of each and every single one of us in the entire world. And if we live our entire lives not being true to ourselves, or being inspired by influences and living vicariously through something that is not naturally us, then it's kind of mind blowing, man. There's so many people who live their entire lives and go to the grave not knowing who they are or accomplishing their things because they felt like they had to change who they were in order to be accepted.
Right.
But I guess that's the beautiful thing about life is going through life and developing your character based upon the situations that you go through, the environments that you put yourself in. All of those create who we become. So if you're true to yourself and you're a product of your environment, then it's the things that you go through every day while you're evolving and growing that will be the creative inspiration for who you become. That way you won't have to seek other individuals or go to other places to be inspired by certain things. Now, I mean, another cool analogy that I like to say is when somebody is building a building, when somebody's building a structure, there's a couple of things that take place. You have to excavate the ground. You have to make sure that the ground is level. Then you have to put down concrete. You have to drill holes. You have to put the pipes in the ground. And then you have to put up the steel frame of the structure. You have to put in the walls, you have to put in the wiring, you have to put in all of these things. So when something is under construction, it takes influence from many people in order to build what it ultimately wants to become.
Right.
But in the end, you can look at a hotel, you can look at a home, and then realize that this structure is standing by itself, and it doesn't need the hands of the carpenters anymore in order to exist. It's strong. It can protect you through weather. You have electric, you have running water, you have everything that you need. But then it gets to a point to where you're a building. You become self-reliant. You don't need the influences anymore.
Right.
And for me, that's the part of creativity that's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Of course, we need inspirations and things to get us to the place where we think we want to be. But then when you get there, life doesn't stop.
Right.
You know, life doesn't stop with the influence. Life has to continue with who you've become. Absolutely. And that's why it's good to be true to yourself, because I don't know, man. It's just a beautiful thing to me. It's a beautiful place to be. It's very inspiring. That's a thought every day that just pushes me in the right direction.
That's awesome. I want to show everybody your drumming, and the first clip I'm going to show is of you with Elon and Jonathan in Jonathan Scales Fourchestra. Folks, check this out and let us know if you have questions for Mason. Tell us where you're watching from. I'll give some shout outs after this clip, but check this out. Talk about inspiration. Check this out. Did I mention that yet? I just love that piece. I got to ask you, and I asked Jonathan this when I had him on. Were either of you nervous at all about rattling off one of those beautiful pieces of glasswork?
Yes, absolutely yes. That was a very, very big concern. And the funny thing is, is when I think it was actually the trap Um, and we counted off the song. And as soon as we counted off the song, there was a big glass vase.
And I should mention, that's the song I played, The Trap.
Yes. And right when we were counting off the song, there was a huge glass bowl, vase type thing that was sitting right near the drums. And it was in a place to where I couldn't get to it fast enough. And it was in a place to where Jonathan, or like nobody could get to it fast enough. And we had this feeling the whole entire time that the vibration or something would cause something to fall. So we were definitely conscious of that. But we counted off the song, and there was this vase that was like $700, and it fell.
Oh!
It fell off of this counter that was like right near the drums. It was like in between Jonathan's pans and the drums. Jonathan counted off the song, and the vase, now it wasn't high off the ground either. The vase was kind of like maybe, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 feet. And it began to fall. And I don't know how Jonathan did this to this day. I don't know how he did it, but he dropped his pan mallets and ran and caught that vase about an inch off the ground.
He time warped.
Like, he was not about to let that happen. And there was nothing I could do because it happened so fast. And the camera crew, everybody stopped and just looked at Jonathan like, how did you do that?
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah, that was the thing.
That's funny. I appreciate you sharing that because he did not mention that in his interview.
Yeah, that was the thing.
You and Elon really, I mean, there's a serious musical marriage here. I mean, obviously the three of you, but when we break anything down to bass and drums, it either really works or it and you guys really work well together. Did that come about naturally between the two of you? And he's such a great bass player too.
Yeah, Elon's insane. Well, I guess it is natural in the sense that when we met each other, our bond and our music relationship is something that had to grow. And I can't think of there's like only a few bass players, man, but Elon is like one of them for me. There's just a chemistry. There's definitely a sound. And that took a very, very long time. Not like a crazy long time, but there were definitely some trials and tribulations, through developing those sounds, you know.
How much of it was discussion versus just playing through it and letting it happening and realizing, okay, that one, you know, and how much of it was like, okay, let's talk about this?
Well, there was a lot of talking,
okay.
Just because we all live in different places. So as far as rehearsals go, you know, we've never rehearsed. Like, the Fourchestra never rehearses. Everybody lives in 3 different states.
Yeah. So
ever since we've been a squad, rehearsals are not a thing. Just because I can't fly to Asheville, I can't fly to Hickory, North Carolina to have a 1-hour rehearsal 3 times a week. Like, that's just impossible.
Yeah. So
the chemistry that we all have, especially me and Elon, you know, drums and bass I mean, you already know, drums and bass are like a thing, you know? And when we got into the Fourchestra, we were learning the material. But at the same time, we were still trying to figure out where we belonged in the airspace of the band.
Right.
That type of chemistry takes time. And especially because we all live so far apart and we can never rehearse, there was a lot of clashing, and sometimes those clashes would take place on tour, or like we would do a show that things didn't really gel well, and then we would learn from that and the next show would be better, or we would figure out, okay, something's happening here. We're not musically, there's a clash. you know, maybe somebody's trying to convey a message and that musical message is not really being understood. There was a lot of that. But that's just music. That's just what happens when you play music in general. But building that relationship and getting solid with like Elon specifically, like there was I think me and Elon definitely put a lot of time into not just our relationship as brothers, but our relationships as band members and a rhythm section too.
Yeah. And
Elon.
I want to tell everybody, I gotta say this. First of all, props to Jonathan. I'm a huge fan of him as a person, as a musician, and props to putting together a band that plays jazz with steel pan drums. I mean, that's just, who else would think of that, right? But I want to encourage everybody to explore their music, because I'm so in love with their music that they are the only band that I invited to be part of the Drum Talk TV retreat that we were going to do. It was going to be the first week in Bermuda, and we were going to have Wally and Ray from Chicago. John Bermuda Schwartz was going to be my co-host. We had Peter Lockett on board, and a couple others that I can't mention because we do want to put this together again, but because of COVID, we weren't able to put on that. But out of all the musicians I know, and nothing against all my other bros and sisses that are great musicians, but there was something about you guys that really fit in perfect with that event, because there is also a steel pan community there in Bermuda. And I thought, man, this would be perfect. So it sucks that it didn't happen, but we'll work towards making that happen. But I say that so that people are even more encouraged to explore your music. I want to give a couple shout outs real quick. There's some really nice comments. There are some questions. Let me just kind of back up through here, folks. Move the microphone closer. And thanks for tuning in, everybody, with Mason and myself. Let's see. MG is a priest. I would agree with that. And then there's his playing, too. We got people from South Wales. We got people from Philly, from all over. Here's a comment from Mike Skinner. Says he has a very philosophical view to his playing, the idea of the playing in the now. It is very fresh, pushes the ideas forward. I have been guilty of taking elements from other drummers much better than myself and incorporating them in my playing. It's an inspirational point of view to leave some of these in the past, but still make some of them, put your own flavor into them and color into them. I agree with that, because I agree with Mason. What you said is it's important for us to learn from our inspirations, but to not necessarily become a carbon copy. If you can do that, that's okay. But to then take those tools from that toolbox and create your own style is golden. John Kinsting, Jokin Drums, who does a series with us, says, in Glassworks video, your snare sound is excellent. Nice pop sound. Please describe the drum and the tuning. Thanks. And it is a beautiful drum indeed. What's the deal with your snare in that video, Mason?
Hold on. I can actually have
you got it nearby?
Yeah, I actually do have it nearby. Cool. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if this is allowed to happen. So the drum that I was playing on Glassworks, it is a 14 by 6.5. It's a 14 by 6.5 snare. I actually designed it. It was built by the guy who built all of Buddy Rich's drums.
Oh, wow.
His name is Bernie Stone.
Oh, yeah.
He actually used to work at Slingerland, but then when Slingerland went out of business, he actually started his own. So Bernie Stone is the only drum maker living who owns the original Slingerland tooling.
Wow. I'd love to talk to that guy. I have 2 Slingerland timpani drums.
Yeah. Yeah, so like Slingerland is it was the thing, and then when the company went out of business, you know, those were some very great sounding drums, and I think you and me were talking earlier about like antiques and like vintage stuff. There's just nothing like the old stuff, you know.
I agree.
And ever since Slingerland went out, I know that there's a demographic of people like an age category of drummers who wish that Slingerlands were still around.
Yeah.
Pretty much Stone Custom Drums is the modern day Slingerland, built by the same guy who built all of Buddy Rich's drums, Louis Belson's drums.
Amazing.
So he builds all of my drums. And the drum that I played on the Lexington Glassworks is actually this bad boy right here. I actually designed this drum.
Beautiful too.
Yeah, it's a 14 by 6.5. It's made out of fiddleback walnut wood, which is a very exotic wood. I have an entire drum set made out of this wood. But this wood is so rare that they only get a chance to use it for rifle backs, pistol handles, maybe a candy bowl on your living room. But yeah, I have an entire kit made out of this spectacular wood. This is a 14 by 6.5, solid ply.
Really?
Fiddleback, yeah, tin lug. And this is what I was using on that particular video. Usually the way that I like to tune snares differently. I think that particular day, it was actually still at a moment to where the band was actually still growing. And actually that Lexington performance, it was actually an eye-opener for me in a lot of ways, because I'm very specific in terms of the instruments that I use in musical settings. So, for example, when you watch the Lexington Glassworks video, I'm playing like Zildjian A Customs. Now, Zildjian A Customs are a very bright cymbal.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just not... When you're playing with a steel pan player, steel pans have a higher timbre. Yeah. They have a higher frequency range. So playing bright cymbals with a steel pan player is not necessarily the best cymbal choice to use when playing with a steel pan player, because those bright frequencies collide, and it can sound very unbearable after a while.
Lose a filling.
So,
lose a filling.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, even then, even with the snares and stuff that I was using, I was trying to find that snare tone that would just kind of sit right in the middle of things.
Kind of balance that out.
Yeah, not too low pitch, but not too high pitch, but just kind of right there. Yeah. And then after Lexington Glassworks, my cymbal choice changed. I started using more like natural, darker cymbals, drier cymbals.
Yeah.
Because those cymbals stick out in their own sonic airspace when you're playing with a bass player and a steel pan player.
Right.
You know, and there's probably lots of musicians or drummers who think that a cymbal is a cymbal, a ride is a ride, a snare is a snare. I mean, to a certain extent, yes. But when you have a musical goal, or like a sound that you're trying to dial in, sometimes it's very good to have those other options.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that's the snare that I was using.
And what's the head on there?
Oh, I play Remo.
Cool.
I have a Remo Ambassador coated.
Awesome.
On the top, and on the bottom, I have a Remo Ambassador snare side.
Cool. You know, yeah. I use Remo too, and I don't know if you've seen me dissect my big blue kit, but in December I switched from pinstripes that I had on there for years and years and years, and I switched to their new color tone stuff. And
gotten a chance to try those.
I like them because I'm an old school guy, and my drums don't have bottom heads, so I love that big tonal open sound. And I was always curious about these new color tones, and I saw them on a few drum sets when we were covering an event in Singapore. So I got to sit down and actually hit them, and I thought, oh my gosh, if there's one drum head that could satisfy me beyond the pinstripes, because those were melodic, this is it. So when I got back, I spoke to Bob over at Remo, and I got a whole set of them for every drum except the timpani drums, which I actually wish they would make. And these things are brilliant, man. They are so, no pun intended, they are colorful, lots of tone. The melodically, you can tune to a note. I just am so thrilled with the sound because a lot of the stuff I play is classic progressive rock. I play a lot of Genesis and Yes and ELP and a lot of Zeppelin and Deep Purple, Jethro Tull, and then I'll switch and play big band stuff. And they're really versatile. They're very dynamic. If I really want them to be more dry and staccato, I could throw some dots or gels on it. But typically, I love. I just love that. That's me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and then when you just said like you take all the bottom heads off, I said Phil Collins. Phil Collins is one of my favorite musicians.
Yeah,
has been since I was like 3, 2. So yeah, I love that sound.
Yeah,
that nice open. That's a good sound.
Yeah, they're cool. They're cool. Lots of fun. I want to peek and see if there's any other questions here. Let's put this other solo on because John Kinsting is making a reference to the phosphorus symbols on the solo in the studio that we posted earlier today. So for those that didn't see that, now you're going to see Mason without a backup band. So it's just Mason soloing. And I'm going to play this whole thing because there's a beautiful musical evolution that happens during this solo, which is more than a solo. To me, that makes it a musical composition. So here we go. Let me pull that up, and then we'll be back. Here we go.
Sorry about that.
All right, I'm going to save the very end, folks. If you want to see the very end of that, you got to watch the post from earlier today on our timeline. But that is just sick. I just love that. I love that. I know who's going to hit me up on Messenger about this. I love that fast sort of diggity-da, diggity-da, diggity, that shuffle you have going. Because John Jokin Drums, who's on board watching right now, is doing a mini-series on the shuffle right now, and he's going to ask if he can use that part of the clip for one of his demonstrations. So I'll just ask you now. Can we use part of that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. It's brilliant. I just love it. It's really, really cool. Is that how much of that is a structured, rehearsed solo, and how much of it is I'm pulling just things I've always done out and putting them in whatever order they come out of my heart right now, and how much of it is, I'm going to make something up? Like, what's the ratio of that for what we just saw?
110% of it was in the moment.
Great.
None of that was planned. None of it was planned. Just played.
Yeah, that's cool. Was some of it stuff that you've never even done before?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, yeah, like it was recorded, and so my buddy Ethan, he actually is a builder of there's a drum company called Philadelphia Drum Co.
Mm-hmm.
And like we're all friends around here. There's a lot of creatives around here. There's a lot of great drummers and musicians that come out of the South Jersey, just New Jersey, Philadelphia area. And like, there's no egos. There's none of that. And, usually very often, and that was actually post COVID-19, that was recorded 2 days before the world was told to not come out of their homes.
Right.
So we didn't know that, COVID was going to hit, but that was actually recorded prior to that. And again, it was just a drum hang. It was just one of those things where 15 drummers in a studio with drums, set up cameras, and just play, just vibe. And
that's so cool.
It's like a very, very creative place to be. And that's all that is. I mean, that video is just a result of me just playing what was on my heart, playing what was on my mind. And none of it was.
I think it's a great lesson for drummers and really for any musician, whether it's guitar, sax, accordion, to freaking explore your instrument. Don't just do cover tunes and don't just read from books. All of that is important. But you've got to take at least equal time to just sit down and barf some stuff out of your limbs and let stuff happen, That's, I think, a big part of how we all discover and form our own sound. And even sometimes go, oh, wow, that drum does that. I never made it do that before. Or a cymbal,
Like, for me, creativity is a very interesting thing, because it's just like if you never go for it, then the unknowns will still be unknown. It's just like
if you have an idea that you think is a creative idea, like I said, it's art, it's creative. So you have people who are kind of in that position like, okay, I have an idea, but I don't want to play this idea. Okay, you know what? Scrap that. This is what I will say. This is what I mean by being true to yourself. Because the more you tell yourself you can't, then you won't. For me, it's all about mentality. If you have a poor mentality, then you will be poor. And you will also find yourself hanging out with poor people. You are a product of your mentality and your environment.
Yeah, you get what you focus on.
Yes. So even if you're broke and you have the mentality of a trillionaire and you dress and you walk and talk like a trillionaire, then people will look at you and respect you. And you will also obtain the mentality of a trillionaire because that's it. Your mind. Okay, your actions are a result of your mentality. So there's lots of drummers who sit down at drums and say, I want to do this. But then they talk themselves out of doing it because there's maybe a lack of confidence.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's a fear element for sure.
Maybe it's fear. Maybe it is the unknown.
Afraid to be criticized is part of it. And I also want to jump in and mention that what you are saying right now is also tied to something in neurolinguistic programming, which is called perception is projection. And the way you project yourself is how you're perceived by others. So going back to exactly what you said about if you dress and you walk the walk and talk the talk, you project that, and that's how you will be perceived. If you dress like a schlep, talk like a schlep, and you're self-denigrating or you're not kind to others, that's what you're projecting, and that's how people will perceive you.
Exactly. Your mentality is the key to your character.
Yes.
So if your mentality is not on the page of pushing the limits, if your mentality is not on the page of, I don't care what anybody else thinks, let me do what my destiny is, it's your mentality is everything. And that's what sets, like I said before, there's only one of each of us on the planet, not unless if you have an identical twin.
And even they're different.
Right. So if you respect yourself, if you have your own mind, if you have your own way of thinking, then why would you ignore who you are for the sake of being accepted by someone who doesn't even understand you to begin with?
Right.
And that's the reason why I say be true to yourself, because when you're true to yourself, then you can be held accountable for the things that you do. And so then when somebody says, wow, this person is really unique, this person is really different, then you know what, you can respect that person, because that person, despite the lip or the people that may not understand what that person's trying to shoot for, that person is so focused and their mentality is so structured towards becoming the best of them that they can possibly be, that you don't even have time to pay attention to people's other opinions.
Right.
Like, for example, there's lots of drummers who go in the practice room and they get frustrated with themselves because they play the exact same thing over and over and over and over again, and they feel like they're not growing. Okay.
Because they're not.
Yeah, but again, it's not because they're not. There's a deeper reason as to why they're not. It stems to your mentality. If you sit down to the drums and you want to go for something, but then you convert back to something that you're comfortable with, then it's your mentality. It's your perception that is causing you not to evolve, not your skill.
Right.
You may have all the skill in the world from practicing and playing drums for 15 years and you still sound the same. That has nothing to do with your lack of growth or your lack of practice. Maybe it has more to do with your mentality versus your skill.
That
See,
makes
because
sense.
when you sit behind the kit and you're trying to go for something, and then you realize that the only thing that's keeping you from accomplishing that is yourself. When in your mind you have this crazy idea of doing boom, and then you go for it, and then your foot tells you you can't. You know, that's a slap in the face. And then you're like, you know what? I might as well just not even try. I might as well just not even push because, man, I hear these things in my head and for some reason I just can't go there. But when you change your perspective and you stop focusing on the things that you can't do and you start again, you change your mentality to accomplish the things that you want to do.
Yeah. Because
that's when you start evolving.
Exactly.
Because now your focus is on creating and growing. Your focus, okay, just like when you go through a situation, okay, we're all human. It's all about what you put your energy into. There's 1,000 things that can happen in a day. Good things can happen and bad things can happen. I'm literally like, it's not a good time. I'm sorry. There's like, even when you go through your day, there's good things that happen and there's bad things that happen. Okay. Now, what you put your energy into determines your mentality. You can focus on the bad things and then you can be a very bitter and angry person, or you can put your energy into positive things and be grateful.
Yes.
So it's about your mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I just want to, there's a couple of things I want to say about that. And this is tied to music, folks. It really is. Everybody has something to be grateful for. I don't care how bad you think you have it or want to believe you have it or how much attached you are to the negativity you've decided to surround yourself with, but there's always something to be grateful for. And when it comes to, like, when Mason is saying, you know, I want to do, and then your foot says no. You can get to that the same way you got to boom, ka boom boom, ka boom boom boom. You get there the same way. You just got to train your limbs, your nerves, your muscle memory. You got to put in the time. It's the same thing. It just might be a longer process. It might be a more inventive process. It might be more of a process of exploring. But either way, Mason, you're right. It really comes down to believing. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
It really comes down to believing. Are you recording, you know, being that we're all on lockdown, sounds like a prison term. Lockdown. Are you, I learned that from a friend. I really don't know what I'm talking about. Are you recording, doing file sharing, session work with anybody? And are you, Jonathan and Elon, working on new stuff now? I guess the real question is, what can we look forward to? Are you working on something that you can talk about yet?
I've been working on my own stuff. I play every instrument.
Oh, great. I did not know that. What else do you play?
Keys, bass, guitar, acoustic guitar, drums, everything.
Oh,
Much.
wow. I did not know that. I know that you play piano because you showed me your vintage Rhodes earlier.
Yeah, and guitar is actually my second instrument. I took guitar at the age of 13.
What's your first? Is it piano?
Well, drums is my first. My mom taught me how to play the drums.
Your mom did?
Yes.
Awesome. Does she still play?
No, not as much.
What would it take to get her to play?
I'm not sure. I'll have to ask her.
Ask her. I would love to see a mother-son video from the two of you.
That would be awesome.
I would love that.
Too.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. My parents were not musicians, but my dad played guitar. I know that doesn't make any sense. My dad fooled around with guitar. In fact, I have his guitar. He's no longer with us. I had his guitar he bought when he was 16 or 17 years old, and it's a Giannini classical guitar when Giannini was still made in Brazil. In fact, just real quick, folks, hang on for this quick ride. So there's a picture of where is he? There's a picture of my dad when he was like 35 playing guitar. And here's the guitar right there on the end next to that's a 1977 mandolin. There's a 10-string Brazilian guitar, but that's my dad's Giannini from 1956 or 57. And it still is as beautiful as ever. I wish I could play it better. I've had some great guitars, use it in the studio for some of my projects over the years. So I just have it on display, and every day I got my picture of my dad in front of me, his guitar, and it's like my dad's shrine, if you will. And my parents,
that's actually incredible. That's very beautiful.
Yeah, well, my parents, like yours, they weren't as much musicians as your mom, I'm sure, but they supported
me. I have these too. Both of my parents are musicians.
Yeah, that's really cool. They still supported me, even though they kind of didn't understand to some degree. They were both creative. I married my mom in a way. My wife is a black version of my mom. Seriously.
Wow.
Into the same stuff, antiques, old movies, old jewelry. She's an artist. She does everything in art. My mother was like that. So when I said I don't want to be an oceanographer anymore, that's my dad's fault for taking me to see Led Zeppelin. And by the third song, I thought, wait, you mean you could do this for a job? Okay, I don't want to be Jacques Cousteau anymore. I want to be John Bonham. And as disappointed as she was, because my first initials are DR for doctor, she was sure I'd grow up and be a doctor of some sort. Yeah. She, a year later, found me my first audition for what became my first tour around the United States playing drums. I was 15 years old. So they were very supportive, and it's wonderful to talk to someone like you that comes from that sort of upbringing where your mom taught you drums and all of that. That's cool. How about you folks listening? Did you have support from your parents, whether you're watching, listening while you're doing something else? I'd love for you to all chime in and say who backed you, and give a shout out to someone who backs you now. If your parents are no longer with you, or if they are, go ahead and tag them and say, thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad. It's really important that they know.
There's so many people. My parents still support what I do. They're both alive and well.
Great.
There's just so many people, man, who put their hands in my life and really, really believed in me, no matter what I wanted to do. Lots of people don't know this either, but like I've always done music, but even before that, for some reason, I've always been into like aviation and aeroscience and engineering, space engineering.
Oh, that's awesome.
Flight and aviation and all of that stuff. So when I was around 3 years old, I attracted to the 50s, 60s, and 70s space era, which were the Mercury, Saturn, and Apollo missions. And as I got older, I realized that they weren't launching space capsules anymore. And even during that time, like my parents were super supportive. And then when I found out that most of the astronauts that they were sending up there during that time, most of them were military fighter pilots. So then when I found out at like the age of 5 that, the space, like the capsule days were over, I kind of wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I kind of started studying aviation and, doing the things that it took to become a fighter pilot. Cool. And even during that time, like I still did music, I still played, and my parents supported me even through that. And then one day I just kind of woke up and I'm like, you know what, if I'm going to fly, I'll probably do it for recreation. But I think, as I got older, I realized that music was kind of, my natural thing. Yeah. So,
well, this leads to a question, my last question, only because I want to make sure we stop in time to be able to put this on Instagram. So it's got to be within an hour. And we'll do this again, man. We'll do this again.
Okay.
So here's my question.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. No,
After
don't be
that,
sorry at all. You
I'll give thanks to all of the people who inspired me. But go ahead.
Yeah, you may have answered the question, but maybe not, because I'm going to ask it in present tense. This is the Maison Guidry fun fact question, which is when you're not playing any music or working on music, what do you like to do?
I like to walk a lot.
Okay.
I love nature.
Oh,
I
great.
love the woods. I have a thing for animals,
Great.
like all kinds of animals, geckos, deer, turtles. It doesn't matter. I just love nature. That's pretty much what I do a lot. Of course, I spend time with my family. And
do you have kids? Are you married?
oh no, I don't have any kids
Okay.
yet.
Do you
I'm
want
not married
kids?
yet.
We have
I
extra
will.
kids. We have extra kids.
We have extra kids. One day, I will have some kids and I will be married. And it's going to be beautiful.
It will, and I know you will be a wonderful partner and father. I know that.
Thank you.
We will have to definitely do this again.
Absolutely. And this was so much fun. And I really, really appreciate you for having me on here. And
my pleasure.
Taking the time out to have me on here and answer some questions and talk to the people.
Yeah, I'm going to play some new stuff I've never done before tonight. I mean, you've inspired me to just not put on any of the stuff I normally play to and just blah! And just let it out. And I might even do it live on Drum Talk TV because I'm not scared like that. You know what I mean? I will pull stuff out of my butt I haven't even listened to in 30 years and go, I think I remember it. Let's put it on. And I'll play it on our live show. So I think I'm going to go and just get creative and do a solo and mix up some grooves and play some stuff that I've never told my body to do and see what happens.
Yeah, that's the best way. I think something else you should do is you should just really record it. And honestly, there's been times, man, where I've sat behind the kit and I literally just say, wherever my hands go, whatever my feet do, whatever comes out just comes out.
I don't do that enough. I got to do that tonight for sure.
And honestly, that's the place to be all the time.
Yeah.
You know, because you just never know what your limit is. And then you discover things and then you're like, wow, I never knew this was inside of me. You know what I mean? And it all just comes out in a very creative way.
Yeah, there's some people that joined us late. Folks, I need to say goodbye only so that we're within 60 minutes and we can put this on our Instagram channel. But I encourage you all, rewind to the beginning. This archives on the Drum Talk TV Facebook page. We'll put it on YouTube, Vimeo, our Instagram channel. There's so much great takeaways from this. And Mason, thanks for taking time. Hang out for a moment because I got to bring my wife in to show her your couch.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you again real soon. And Mason, thanks so much. Bye, everybody. You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good one, everybody.